Thank you for tuning into Zim News Beat TV.
I understand there is no motto, I asked, and I'm giving my own motto: zero tolerance to child marriages. Do we agree?
Yes.
Consistent faces. Has it been a tearing day? No. Right, it's okay. So zero tolerance to child marriages, isn't it? Right. Anyway, I've changed my presentation because initially I thought I had about 20 minutes, but I'm told it's supposed to be just 10 minutes. So maybe if you look at the slides, they might not be aligning to what I'm going to be saying. I'll try to summarize as much as I can, but if I'm too fast, please feel free to raise your hand and I'll clarify. Right, the African Committee of Experts on the Rights and Welfare of the Child is a committee which was established in 2001 following the adoption of the African Children's Charter in 1990 and also when it entered into force in 1991. The committee is made up of 11 members, 2 from each region of Africa. We have 5 regions, 1 extra person who is there for the purposes of voting, and each region has got 1 male and 1 female, issues of gender parity. And within the committee, you'll find that each member has got specific responsibilities, that of having oversight role on 5 countries. We've got 55 African Union states, and we have 11 members. That each member has got 5 countries where they have an oversight role on children's rights issues. And my countries, they've already been stated in the introduction. Each member also has got a special thematic area which they have to look into, run with, to ensure that children's rights are realized vis-a-vis that specific thematic area. And I am a special rapporteur for children without parental care in Africa. Over and above that, you find that another mechanism which we have as a committee, we have technical working groups which also focus on different specific child rights issues. I'll just mention one. We have a technical working group on children with disabilities in Africa. And I'm also happy to inform you that within our committee, we've got a special rapporteur on ending harmful practices in Africa. This is inclusive of child marriages. Child marriage for us as a committee is not really a positive term. It sounds very negative because child marriage is a violation of children's rights. As far as we understand from a child rights-based approach, it is sexual exploitation. So we think about it as we go on with our work. So the committee, what does it do? It undertakes tasks of promoting and protecting the rights and welfare of the child by the mandates given to it under the Charter. Broadly speaking, the committee has 5 key mandates: that of considering state reports. Periodically, each state has to report every 3 years. Initially, when the states ratified, they have to submit an initial report within the first 2 years. Thereafter, it's every 3 years. And within these reports, in relation to what we are discussing here, there has to be a report on the progress the state has made in ending child marriages. What are the legal reforms which have happened in that state? What are the policies in place to ensure that child marriage is kept? What are the measures which are being done to ensure that laws are enforced? Many countries in the southern region, some have gone through the reforms of the laws, starting from the constitution, and one positive area for the Southern Africa, each country has defined the child according to the charter, which is very explicit. A child is anybody below the age of 18. That's a positive one. But few countries are aligning the other related laws to this definition. Some of the related laws are the Marriages Act, isn't it? which should, if aligned, aid in stopping or ending child marriages. Some states with that definition, with those explicit laws, they are not being enforced. And also you find that besides the legislative frameworks which are either not being enforced or they are slow in terms of being reformed, or they are there but enforcement is very poor, you find that cultural and religious factors, the norms and values, they play a key role in issues of child marriages. Thus, as a committee, our business is also to ensure that we encourage states to raise awareness on the dangers of child marriages. We encourage states to come up with programs which would lead to positive behavioral changes vis-a-vis looking at child marriages. And we also encourage states to domesticate the charter. If states domesticate the charter, how will it help in ending child marriages? The right to education, if it is realized in every state, especially for the girl child, you find that getting into marriage is something which will come after they have completed their education. The right to identity, the right to birth registration. If a child is registered, we will know the right age of the child. And like where a child is not registered, if for one reason or the other, maybe their stature is big, they get into marriage, you will not be able to really prove that they are below 18 years. So birth registration is a key factor in terms of realization of children's rights. Children are supposed to be protected, isn't it? Protect children from all forms of harmful practices, sexual exploitation, including this topic of child marriages. And if we are going to look into it critically, and our laws are aligned to the charter, and our laws are also aligned to the SADC model law, you find that will go a step further. Because in Southern Africa, on average, I'm saying on average, because some states their prevalence is lower than the others, but on average, 25% of child marriages, they happen before the child becomes 18 years, and it is a very big cause of concern. So one mechanism we do is through that reporting, the states report, and we look at all these things. How far are you on each article pertaining to the right of the child? The committee also goes on missions, monitoring missions to actually go to the state, see it on the ground, what exactly is happening, is it aligning to what has been reported, because some states, they are good at writing a very floral report, but when you go on the ground, it's parallel, it does not match. So at times we come for monitoring, for supportive missions, and we also come in on investigative missions. If a negative report comes to our desk as a committee, we go to that stage to carry out investigations. We also receive communications of complaints from individuals, from organizations pertaining, for an example, issues of child marriage is just an example, because this is what we are talking about. If, let's say, for an example, a child has been betrothed or has been married off, and an organization or that child reports, but the processes of justice do not take the case out properly to the disadvantage of the child, that can be brought to our desk as a complaint through our complaints mechanism. And through that, we can actually call in the state, we can call in the complainant, and we will see how best we can deal with that, so that at the end of the day, it's in the interest of the child. Right, in the interest of the child. All right, I've just written there in case some people would really want to know the special rapporteur towards end of harmful practices in Africa. Her name is Honorable Hembo Tamskanzi, is written there. And you are all free and open to communicate with any member of the committee, including any in relation to that. Right? I'm just summarizing this like this. What articles right? You find that the African Children's Charter has 45 articles, but which are the specific articles which are related to ending child marriages, which will help us encourage states to ensure that child marriages come to an end. Article 2 of the African Children's Charter is very explicit on the definition of a child. That a child is any human being who is below the age of 18. You find that there are some conventions or protocols which are not very explicit, which will leave countries to decide the definition to be either 15 or below 12 years. But the African Charter has no two ways. It's strictly 18. And we are very happy, as I've already alluded to, the Southern African regions, they have in their constitution the definition is below the age of 18, and Botswana, they've lifted it up. It used to be 12 years and below, but 3 years ago, if I'm not mistaken, it's now up to 18. Then Article 1 of the Charter states that any custom, tradition, cultural or religious practice that is inconsistent with the rights, duties and obligations contained in the present Charter shall, to the extent of such inconsistency, be discouraged. So remember, when we are talking of the Charter, it's a regional legal instrument, and states are obliged, once they ratify, they are obliged to follow suit, and they cannot give an excuse later to say, no, we made a mistake, we want to have a reservation on Article 2 or a reservation on Article 3. One side, the country is obliged to meet the standards. Article 3 is every child shall be entitled to the enjoyment of the rights and freedoms recognized and guaranteed in this charter, irrespective of the child's or his or her parents or legal guardians, race, ethnic group, color, sex, language, religion, origin, birth, or other status. Article 21, state parties to the present charter shall take all appropriate measures to eliminate harmful social and cultural practices affecting the welfare, dignity, normal growth, and development of the child in particular. We all are quite aware that once a child gets into marriage, it has got its own negative repercussion, physically, mentally, socially, academically. And when you look at physical, mainly at health, the child is highly predisposed to different types of infections, especially HIV infection. When they get pregnant, because their structures, their bones, they are not ready to carry the pregnancy, neither to go through delivery, it increases the potential of the child to have stillbirths many a time or preterm labors, and it also gives a higher risk, about 25% of mortality rates. So it would be very interesting also if states will study the mortality rates, out of that mortality rates, what percentage is of children. Next slide, please. Alright, that's a repetition. Next one, please. Alright, it's a repetition again. Alright, can you leave that one? In relation to the articles which I have highlighted, you will find that the Charter has got 4 principles. And if states go alongside those principles, we are promoting the child rights-based approach. In whatever we do to ensure that we end child marriages, we need to do it in the best interest of the child. What is it that the child will benefit if they get into marriage? And for me, there's nothing which the child will benefit. It's the guardian or the parent who are sending them off into marriage who are benefiting, not this child, because they are being deprived of their childhood. So whatever we do should be in the best interest of the child. The child should continue with education. We are talking of Agenda 2063, and when we look at Agenda 2063, specifically Aspiration 6 is talking about development of Africa through the development of its children, the youth and the women. And how do they develop? Besides the health aspect, it's also education, isn't it? And the children also to enjoy their childhood. So the best interest of the child is very paramount. Also survival. Survival goes hand in hand with that. Whatever we are doing, if we are going to marry off this child, is it going to promote their survival, their health, physically, mentally, psychologically? No. So we do it to promote the survivor. This is why we are saying no to child marriage, no to child sexual exploitation. The other principle is child participation. In whatever we do, we need to hear the voice of the children, of that girl child. What is the child saying? A very good example they play there. The child is saying, no, Daddy, I cannot go into marriage. My sister is already there. I need to continue with my education. I need to continue with my education. I'm still just a child. But the father was not listening. It was through the neighbors. But if we could have those platforms starting from right in our homes, that we talk to our children, give them information so that they make informed decisions. Listen to them, because nothing without them is for them. Like in the scenario, to that child in the scenario, it's not my business to get married. Why should I get married? But somebody is making a decision for the child. So we should not make decisions. So we should encourage our states, our communities, our religious sectors to ensure that children's voices are heard. Taking cognizance of the African cultural aspects, which we are saying, let's try to move away from that. We are not saying that children should be at the forefront. We are not saying that children should be demanding losing our Ubuntu culture. Within that Ubuntu culture, let's give them an opportunity. Let's listen to them, and let's make sure that their rights are realized. And the last principle is the principle of non-discrimination. Be it a boy, be it a girl. Yes, the girl child suffers more, but if you look at data, slowly the boy child is also coming in. So I don't know, when we say child marriage, it's not saying girl child, isn't it? We also talk of the boy child, we should not discriminate. I think, yeah, I'm here, thank you very much. So from what I've been given, in terms of time, I'll then go to what would we recommend as a committee. The other mechanisms within the African Union, I'm not going to look at them in a lot of detail, but what should we do, or what are we recommending as a committee? We would recommend that states should strengthen family systems right from the roots. Let's take out the bars, let's take out the root causes of child marriage. Let's strengthen family systems so that there is no separation of children from their parents. Once they are separated, we end up with children without parental care. And the child without parental care is more vulnerable and at risk of getting into an early marriage. We are also recommending that states to work out around the area of ensuring that poverty is non-existent. It also comes to strengthening the family systems, increasing the budget to have that support. Yes, we have our partners, we love them, they complement government activities, but for sustainability, the government should, the governments, the different governments within the SADC should actually raise their budgets around family system strengthening, around child protection system strengthening, to ensure that we do not have any child who goes into marriage at any stage. And also from an African community's point of view, we would really want to encourage states to align according to the SADC model law. Because the SADC model law, I've been reading through it for months now, is the African Charter on the Rights and Welfare of the Child. It's exactly the same, but it has been unpegged to suit the Southern Africa's region cultural context, to make it very easy, and we align to that. So this is the call which I will make. I had a lot to share, but as you ask the questions, I think some of the things will be coming out. But in summary, this is what we have as a community: zero tolerance to child sexual exploitation, which we are terming child marriage.
Allow me just to get our attention out of the structures, the infrastructure, the pathways that we've talked about, and for us to immediately speak to the children, the young women, the young girls who are being married off at this particular age. Even though I do recognize what Commissioner Musiwa said, which is increasingly or incrementally we're beginning to see boys also being exploited in this particular way. Firstly, in the Southern African region, we can see that with approximately 26% of women aged between 20 to 24 were married before the age of 18. And we also know that when we go to country-specific focus, Malawi has one of the highest rates, with approximately about 50% of women between the ages of 20 to 24 right now recording that they were married as children or before the age of 18. We know Mozambique records or comes in second at 48%. We know Zambia, and now with a new law that Womba was talking about, there's progress, but Zambia also had 46%. And other countries within the region also present high and alarming statistics as far as this is concerned. If we look at what the issues are, why this is the case, we see inconsistencies in terms of legislation, and I know some of this is to be cured by the model law that Mr. Kurasha has so ably highlighted. But we have inconsistent legislative frameworks that lack comprehensive, consistent provisions with regards to marriage. And by this, on the one hand, they can provide that the age of marriage is 18, but by the other hand, they allow exceptions to this law, such as parental consent, such as judicial consent. There's lack of prioritization of issues to do with marriage. I'm happy with what Caleb talked about when he said that when you have government agenda, a lot of times we talk about agriculture, we talk about seed, we talk about roads, but hardly do we speak about children. Again, Womba has talked about climate change and how we will all say that this is an existential crisis, but we don't recognize that this is an existential crisis for a child of 15, 14, and in some instances even lower, getting married as children. A third thing is that we have ad hoc pathways towards progress, including legal reform. A lot of the times we, as non-state actors and even state actors, take this issue of child marriage and at different approaches and not work collaboratively towards addressing it. Education and awareness can't go without being said. Poverty and cultural norms, because in some of our cultures, this is a practice. So what? How do we address this in view of the things that we've heard today? The thing that we would want to present as a singular strategy, because there are various strategies which comprise different action points, but the singular strategy that we wish to propose to you at this particular convening is the multisectoral approach. The multisectoral approach is the principle of prioritizing a specific issue as a national agenda, aligning the various government instruments, departments, ministries to know their unique roles in addressing it, having a coordinator within government and not outside of it to actually drive this agenda, having non-state actors align and provide technical support in terms of the true north, in terms of the golden standards, and then finally having other partners, including development partners, align or cascade the issues downwards. All I have said can be broken down into 5 distinct pathways. And if you don't then recall what I speak about when I speak about the multisectoral approach, please do remember these 5 pathways, because they've been proven successful in advancing the rights of women and girls, not just in the SADC region, but indeed across Africa and indeed across the globe. So the 5 pillars that I speak to are: the first, prioritization. As an entry point to this approach, prioritization looks like establishing, what that looks like on the ground is establishing a robust legal framework that encompasses all the core elements towards addressing child marriage. It also looks like hearing from the top, political will, and not just having the issue of child marriage being addressed by the Ministry of Children or Social Affairs, but hearing with clarity, including, for example, from the presidency, that this is an agenda, that we want to end child marriage as an agenda. This will align issues. This will ensure there's little to no conflict with regards to the ending of child marriage or the prohibition of child marriage and customary, religious, or other personal laws within a country. In addition, all the laws relating to child marriage or child protection need to be harmonized to eliminate any conflict in their interpretation. There should also be laws and policies that facilitate universal and accurate birth registration, as we've already heard, because how do you know when someone is 18 if you do not know when they were born? We have examples of success of prioritization in other regions. When Sally was here, she said we bring examples from different spaces, and no, we've not eradicated child marriage in the Eastern African region, but we're beginning to see reduced numbers. And for example, prioritization in Eritrea looked like the National Strategic Plan had squarely at its center the issues to ensure that children and women's rights are not abandoned, and female genital mutilation and other issues within that actually transition are actually addressed. With regards to the second issue, the second pillar of the MSA is the alignment of each ministry, each department, to actually speak to this. What I mean by this is that every ministry, every department has a distinct role in addressing child marriage. It's not an issue, again, for the Ministry of Children Affairs. When you talk about child marriage, children will miss school, and so the Ministry of Education must be involved. When you talk about child marriage, it needs to be prosecuted and investigated as a crime, and so you'll have Ministry of Interior, the police will also be involved. You'll have the judiciary involved. You'll have all other actors involved. Social affairs in terms of aligning resources so that there's reduced poverty, so that at the end of the day it is not a driver. And so it's critical for alignment of each ministry and departments to fall in place. Again, in view of time, allow me to move to the issue of coordination. The convener of the multisectoral approach or the multisectoral approach plan must be within the state. This is, as I've said earlier, they should be capable of effectively monitoring the activities, the plans, the strategy towards ending child marriage. They should also ensure that there is no duplication of roles or duplication of efforts. The structure should be, again, as I've indicated, should be such that it is not necessarily housed within the children's department. It should be, as we all understand, and as we all know, majority of our ministries of gender or ministries of children affairs are usually under-resourced, under-prioritized. And as a result, we find that if the coordinator is housed therein, then they will not have the sufficient clout to call actors, to get actors on board, and for them to deliver and to monitor and evaluate the progress towards actually ending child marriage. And so it is critical, therefore, to have a coordinator within state that has clout, that has authority, that houses the necessary oomph, if you like, to be able to champion, deliver, and coordinate and summon actors to ensure that they deliver towards ending child marriage. The fourth pillar is a pillar of technical support. Now, we all recognize that none of us has the monopoly of knowledge on issues, including on issues of child marriage. But we also recognize that amongst us, we've got actors who track, who follow, who document, who keep in touch with the legal advocacy, with the legal frameworks, with the practices, with the jurisprudence that is emerging with issues to do with child marriage. As such, it would be important then for technical support to be lent to the coordinator by such a person. Oftentimes, we as Equality Now see ourselves serving this role, but we know other actors do as well. And we encourage you as non-state actors to also participate in this role in providing that technical support, being that repository of information to the coordinator to ensure that they know from the least and the furthest, from the rural areas to the city, what the statistics and the reality on the ground looks like, to call them out and hold them out to account where they don't reach certain areas, to provide the latest, and the latest in this regard is the SADC model law, to ensure that they're familiar with the provisions and ensure that the legal framework is aligned to the same. And so the pillar of technical support is critical in supporting and in ensuring actually delivery of the promise of zero child marriages in our context. Our final pillar is the pillar on partnerships. Now, when we speak to partnerships, this now speaks to including development partners, including non-state actors, again, serving that distinct role of supporting in terms of resources, serving that distinct role of ensuring that the issues are reached down to the last person on the ground. And so in the partnerships role, as I think has been properly highlighted by Felicitas, we identify our distinct roles as non-state actors. Those of us who walk into the boardroom and negotiate, those of us who provide policy briefs and policy papers, and those of us who engage in a different, in a militant, as she put it, in a militant way to ensure we hold state to account. So, in summary, the gaps that we see with regards to why we do not have sufficient progress as far as ending child marriage is concerned, we speak to the need, 1, of domestication and harmonization of laws, 2, stakeholder engagement, including capacity building, 3, building capacity of citizens so that they can hold their own fort, 4, monitoring and evaluation, 5, awareness raising and community engagement, and 6, a multi-sectoral collaboration. And all of these are properly addressed within the context of the multi-sectoral approach, and which works consistently towards delivery, again, of the promise that no child will be married, because indeed children cannot be married. I thank you.
So I'm used to asking people questions and not being asked. But let me attempt to respond to the question. The question regarding how does the transformation affect engagement, including with civil society. If at all the transformation affects the engagement, it is change where this is consolidated. The engagement with civil society is strengthened to the extent of the repositioning of the SADC as a parliament, graduating from an umbrella board of national parliaments of SADC member states. So expect to have more opportunities to be able to engage. And the question, second question, regarding whether the parliament will be making soft law. We must remember that the transformation process is underway. I mentioned the fact that what has been amended is the treaty, and the protocol will be following. So the treaty is like your constitution, and the protocol is like your enabling legislation. So that process is underway, and as a result, I would not want to preempt the decision makers, who in this case is the summit. But what I can say is that the amendment, the agreement amending the treaty says the SADC Parliamentary Forum will maintain the consultative and advisory role. And that means that at the very least, the soft law approach will continue. And if I must just give a bit of assurance in terms of the opportunities that model laws represent. When you are negotiating protocols, and colleagues who have been involved in this process will know that the negotiation process sometimes can be very tough, for you to get to consensus. And in the end, sometimes what is eventually agreed upon is such a whittled down version to a point where some of the things that you would have wanted included would have been lost. And this is what model laws have as an opportunity. Because it is non-binding, it is flexible, we have an opportunity to include all the golden standards. When we were developing one of the model laws and we brought together legal drafters from ministries of justice, they actually, one of them gave feedback to say, sometimes we are given this responsibility to draft law at national level, but I may not be as exposed to regional and international development in terms of the obligations, in terms of the ongoing programming work, and the evidence that is emerging from them. And the model law is an opportunity for us to collect all that into one document, and one that remains available for all stakeholders, both state and non-state actors. So for me, when I have listened, sometimes people talking about we need a parliament with binding law, with legislative powers. When I went to the East African Legislative Assembly, which is one of the parliaments in the world which is privileged to have lawmaking powers, the framework requires them to, upon adopting a bill, submit to partner states. If any of the partner states withhold assent, that bill lapses. And what has happened sometimes is that you would have spent the last 2 years developing a bill, you would have spent resources developing that bill, and eventually that bill gets to, for lack of a better word, to be thrown out. Would you have a model law that is adopted, or a potentially binding draft bill, bill that is thrown out? From a programming perspective, I would be very much happy to have a model law that is available and everyone agrees that it's a collection of what we're looking for. That's not to say legally binding powers have no place. They do have their own place in terms of, if you have a legally binding law, it means that law has to be enforced. Whether or not we have the adequate mechanism becomes another layer. So the model law, the parliament will at the very least maintain the model law-making function, but I will not preempt the policymakers. Then in terms of penalties, for non-compliance, you mentioned failure to report or minimum progress. When you have minimum progress, I think I've already indicated the fact that SADC is deliberative, consultative and advisory entity, and as such, we do not have powers of enforcement. We use persuasion, and therefore, we do not execute penalties. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let's appreciate the response.
To say, what was the magic that you had to play to use the SADC model law as a CSO actor, working with Parliament on the Marriage Act success, as well as the current debates going on?
I think I'm going to echo what Caleb said. 5 minutes, we'll see what magic we can work. I'm just going to share. My name is Womba Wanki. I'm Executive Director for Generation Alive, based in Lusaka, Zambia, and also the chairperson of the CSO Network on Ending Child Marriage in Zambia. We are now at 45 members of the network, Sally, from the 32. Our journey, I think I must say, as a country, we're very proud that we finally have a law that prohibits child marriage under both customary law and statutory law, because that was always a problem, the duality of the legal system. And our journey begins from advocacy around the enactment of a law to protect children, which we saw happen in 2022 with the Children's Code Act. Why is this law very important, and why is it so symbolic? It is the law that actually defines what child marriage is and sets the age at 18 in alignment with the Constitution, and it also domesticates the African Charter on the Rights and Welfare of the Child and also the Convention on the Rights of the Child.
Thank you for tuning into Zim News Beat TV.